So, I already did one worst to best with my favorite band, Porcupine Tree. Now that I have better equipment and whatnot, I think I'm going to make another one, because I really like making videos like this. I'm a big list fanatic person. And, yeah, in the first episode I said I was going to talk about a lot of artists that I don't think get enough attention, artists that I really like, that aren't, like, as ubiquitous or anything. So, yeah, we're going to take a crack at that. And today we are going to cover one of my favorite modern musicians. I mentioned her in my video about my favorite metal albums. That would be a one Miss Chelsea Wolfe. Chelsea Wolfe is a California-based experimental, industrial, gothic rock, doom metal artist who evades classification. Chelsea Wolfe is one of the most interesting and unique musical voices now currently, not just because of her trademarked willowy, echoey singing and her tendency to hop between genres, but the fact that she almost reinvents her sound on every single album, but still sounds consistent throughout her discography. So I find that impressive, and I love her so much and so many albums by her, so I figured I would lend Miss Wolfe a little bit of attention, because she totally deserves it. We do not have a lot of solo female artists working nowadays who aren't like, like pop-oriented people like, Carly Rae Jepsen, or, fuck. Look, I don't know. Let me just say this, though. Chelsea Wolfe is a far cry from most solo female musicians due to her influences. She takes a lot out of Nick Cave, who I've already mentioned is one of my favorite bands. Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds is one of my favorite bands. Nick Cave is one of my favorite musicians. She has a lot of Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails, another one of my favorite artists. A lot of Gothic stuff that's, PJ Harvey kind of stuff. Experimental side, where she's maybe towards more Kate Bush. So, yeah, she has a lot of good music, and I want to recommend all of it to you, and hopefully this video will make somebody else go listen to her, because she deserves your money. So, let's go! Okay, at number 7 at the bottom of the list, we have Chelsea Wolfe's debut album, Mistake in Parting. This is actually an album that I mentioned when I talked about her on my favorite metal albums video, and I did mention that this record is not really my favorite of hers, and, judging by the place on this list, it is in fact my least favorite. That's not to say that it's not without its shining moments. It is a debut record, and with an artist as weird and eclectic as Chelsea Wolfe, the first album being kind of a mishmash of lots of different things, some of which don't mix, is kind of inevitable. It's a lot like Porcupine Tree's first album, where it's just there's so much happening and there's not really a unified sound, so the album doesn't feel super consistent. The one thing I can praise her for is her vocals have been great on the outset. Like, she has a fantastic singing voice. She always puts a little bit of an echo filter on her voice so that it sounds empty and gloomy. And here, the production is but I think that lends a charm to some songs and not to others. It's definitely not as consistent as her other work, and I don't know, I feel like a lot of the ideas she played with, she just sort of refined them on later albums, because each album after this one has like a focus. It has a definitive genre that separates it from not only the rest of music in general, but from her own discography. Mistake in Parting is honestly her most boring album. Not to say that it's like a snooze or anything, but sonically, she doesn't really bring much to the table other than her voice. It's a very slow album, very ponderous album, and it's just kind of okay. I'd say it alternates on like a song-by-song basis, but everything here kind of feels like a demo, but it's an actual album? I would still recommend you check it out if you are a fan of her other work, just because it's nice to see where she started out. But, that being said, don't feel too bad if you skip this one. It's just kind of good. It's okay. Ish.
My sunshine, my only sunshine.
Now, at number 6, we have The Grime and the Glow. The Grime and the Glow is her sophomore effort, which, in my opinion, fared way better than her first one. Well, I mean, not way better, but if the first album is average, then this album is just pretty straight up fantastic. I do have a similar complaint. Maybe my largest complaint is that, like Mistake in Parting, it's a bit more varied sonically, which does create a lot of diversity for an interesting listen, but I don't feel like it's as focused as her other albums. But I think every song here is really great. I think Children of the Antichrist is one of my favorite Chelsea Wolfe songs, and she has that cover that I talked about of You Are My Sunshine, which remains to be the most frightening song I think I've ever heard in my life. The album is very grungy, very gothic rock. It's probably the most Nick Cave she's been other than, like, Pain is Beauty. And, you know, it's a little bit more lo-fi, but I don't feel like it's a limit of the production. I kind of feel like it was more of an artistic choice. Vocals on this album are even better than they were previously, and they were always pretty good. Songwriting in general, too, is great. These songs surprisingly have some really, really great hooks, which is not something she's typically known for, but at the onset of her career, she was pretty good at that. So, The Grime and the Glow is a very solid experience from the first track to the last, and yes, it's not as consistent, but I still feel like this is when she really came into her own. It's not super unique sounding. You could probably find a lot of other artists that sound like this, but I think lyrically she's very apocalyptically oriented, very biblical in some ways. And it works. This album has a very spooky atmosphere that can occasionally just become really scary. So I like The Grime and the Glow quite a bit. Okay, this is where I'm going to get a little bit stranger, as we're going to get to number 5 here. Now, you'll notice that I say 7 albums, but when Chelsea Wolfe has only released 6 studio albums. That's because I'm counting a compilation of hers of acoustic songs called Unknown Rooms. Unknown Rooms is exactly what it sounds like. It's Chelsea Wolfe doing acoustic songs. And to be perfectly honest, I kind of wish this was her first album instead of Mistake in Parting, because it's pretty great, and the demo lower-fi quality here makes a lot more sense. She has some, I mean, like, Flatlands is an incredible opening song. I don't think any of the songs get quite that good after Flatlands, but I will say this sounds more like her. Like, when I think of Chelsea Wolfe, this kind of music is exactly what comes to mind. I don't think that it's also not an album that's super unified, just because I think it's a collection. It's not exactly a standalone project. She does cover other songs from other albums that she has released, because at the time I believe this came out between Apokalypsis and Pain is Beauty. But I think that it is totally worth a listen. I think it should count as one of her, like, actual albums. It's just as good as most of her albums, too. Not perfect, like, the tracks don't flow together well. The album is not, like, it's a compilation album. But the standalone moments for each track on its own are pretty great. So, yes, please check out Unknown Rooms if you haven't already. If you're still a big fan of Chelsea Wolfe, like me, and having not heard this album, seek it out, because it's full of great stuff, and I didn't know about it until Morgan did. Morgan told me, and I just sort of was like, oh, okay, I'll check that out, and it turned out to be really fucking good. Okay, now we're getting into the realness. On my metal video, I mentioned that pretty much every album she made after Mistake in Parting was, like, classic. And The Grime and the Glow and Unknown Rooms are both really, really, really good. But they're not as good as the top shelf members of her discography. more mainstays, the things that she's known for. I would still consider those albums to be of like incredibly high quality because Chelsea is she's already operating on another level. Without Mistaken Parting, every album she's released has been so fantastic that these next ones sadly overshadow other albums that are still good. That being said, this entry goes to Pain is Beauty. Pain is Beauty is the first album of Chelsea's that I listened to, and it is fucking weird. I love it. Love it. From the first track, which is Feral Love, you can just tell that this is going to be way more experimental than her earlier work fared. Like, the instrumentation on every song in this album is just, it's crazy, but it somehow works and does not seem so jarring. Like, I can't imagine what instruments made some of the noises that are in these songs. I think it is a lot of Trent Reznor influence, especially, like, even late era Trent Reznor stuff like their EP Still or something off of With Teeth. The album itself is just this dark dive into, like, an abyss, which is the name of another album, but it's so despondent. She's, like, lamenting, like, relationships that have died, feeling alone, feeling isolated, and the way her vocals work as, these, the willowy, echoey kind of vocals, it makes you kind of feel like you're alone in like an empty warehouse and all you can hear is her voice. And her vocal performances on Pain is Beauty are probably the best of her entire career. She has to really... she holds a lot of notes and she comes in strong with a lot of tracks. If I had to pick a favorite, it's either Feral Love, oh hell, where my phone at? As well as The Warden, They'll Clap When You're Gone, and the closer track, Lone, is probably... it's one of my favorite closing tracks, and is up there with one of my favorite songs of hers. It's probably the best one on the album. It's weirder, it's strange, but it's still consistent. I actually wouldn't recommend starting here, just even though I did, because it's a bit too weird. You might want to acclimate yourself to some of her other albums. I would probably start with The Grime and the Glow because it has the most accessible sound, but Pain is Beauty is experimental even by her already high standards, so, that's cool. Ah, yes. We arrive at the top 3. These top 3 albums are just... classics through and through, the other ones I've talked about with the exception of the first one. These are like all-time favorites of mine. And in third place as the bronze medal, metal, because doom metal, it's His Spun. His Spun I already talked about in my my metal video, which is Chelsea's biggest departure from her music. She still has a very gothic influenced sound, but on His Spun, she just kind of does doom metal. It's really hard, it's really abrasive, there's lots of really interesting themes, it's a really dark album, even by her standards. She discusses some pretty sick shit in it if you really listen to the lyrics. But sonically speaking, this is just incredible. This is better than most contemporary doom metal albums, and it's not even like strictly just that. Her experimental sound is here, her songwriting is incredibly good. Almost as good as it was on, like, Pain is Beauty. She definitely went for a more, like, it's almost a more horror aesthetic. It's like, even you look at the album cover and you listen to Spun, which is one of the songs, I think that might be the first song on there, not remember. But songs like Spun, Twin Fawn, 16 Psyche, they're so, like, oddly catchy and hummable, even though they are just fucking scary and sad-ass songs. But it's so... It's her going full into her heavier influences, and I love that. It's fantastic. If anything holds this album back, I feel like there are maybe, like, there's maybe like one track on here that I feel is a bit superfluous because it's a pretty long album, and some songs tend to sound a bit samey, but I can forgive that for the most part because of how, like, committed she was to this particular genre. But there are some songs that just sort of feel like they're, you know, oh, this is that other song, but slightly kind of different with a different verse and lyrics. But it's a small blemish of a problem on an otherwise phenomenally good album. And to round out the top two, at the silver medal, we have Abyss, her second to most recent albums. And Abyss is... whoo boy! Abyss is a trip. Abyss is probably the album of hers I've listened to the least, just because it is oppressive, it is heavy, the production is brittle. It sounds like every song here is made of glass and it's about to break. That analogy makes no sense unless you listen to it, and then I feel like you'll get more into it. Abyss is also very heavy, but it's more gothic hard rock than it is like actual metal, but the electronic and experimental side from Pain is Beauty sort of blended with this album, and it's just like, there's some like sound flourishes, you're just like, what the hell even is this? What am I listening to? And it's great. There are songs like Iron Moon and Dragged Out that just, you really feel the emotion that she's like trying to let out. It's a bit less one note than her other albums. I think she puts a lot of emotion into this one, only rivaled by the amount of emotion she puts into Apokalypsis. But everything on here is just so bleak, and I love it for that. It's such a great, interesting listen. If you've never heard anything like it before, or if you haven't like listened to goth rock or shit before this, this will be quite a surprise. I wouldn't start here because it's so good, it might make the other ones look by comparison, but still, if you just want to jump right in and go for it, I would recommend it. Carrion Flowers is the best opening track I think she's come out with, and yeah, I love it. Fucking all the way with Abyss. And to round out the final album, my favorite of hers, and in my opinion the best, which is Apokalypsis. This has always been my favorite album of hers, but it took me a while to truly... like, I used to think Abyss was better, but as I kept listening to it, it gives me an already more unique feeling. It is very much a lot of Trent Reznor, a lot of the Downward Spiral, but even weirder. Like, she's always had some sort of like mythological component to her music. A lot of stuff like that shows up in Grime and the Glow, and I think not House of Metal, that's just a song from that album, Pain is Beauty. But yeah, I think that this is her best album. It's very Lovecrafty, and there's a song called Through the Forest Towards the Seas, which is it's an instrumental, but it's like the only instrumental I've ever heard that sounds like Lovecraft. I can't even describe it. It's so inexplicable. You have more somber tracks that are a bit more pulled down to earth than her other ones. Tracks like Mare, Tall Bodies, tracks, Moses, and the fantastic album closer, movie Screen. This is definitely her most lyrically and structurally experimental album, not like sonically like it was with Pain is Beauty, but I feel like this is her most consistently good experience, and it really solidifies what I think of when I think of Chelsea Wolfe. Because a little bit of everything is on here, but it doesn't sacrifice consistency for it, which is a problem that a lot of good albums have. But on here, there is a very unique vibe. From the get-go, you have that track Primal Carnal, and you know that just from that little interlude, you're in for some shit. It's equal parts sad, angry, desperate, and just hard at points, and I love it. It's a great album to listen to while writing, I found. But yeah, it's amazing. So that was my best to worst on a one Miss Chelsea Wolfe. If you have any ideas for what artist I should do next, please comment below and all that fun shiz. because, you know, I need recommendations, but, you know, I'm trying to do artists that are a bit less in the main consciousness of people's music. I can't words today, but regardless, go check out these albums. She's a fantastic artist, and she needs more attention and love. So, peace out.